Standing up in McKinney. This is, according to Callus, it is episode 700. It is going to be on the Great American IQ Test that started today and goes on until November the 5th. I wonder if the 5th of November might play into our future. Well, ladies and gentlemen, stick around. Let's talk about it. Before I get there, let me remind you, the best way you can help me continue to make a difference, be heard, however you want to phrase it, is to like, share, and subscribe to this here podcast. Now, I want to remind you, this is going to be, I guess, the last planned episode, certainly of this current format. What does that mean? Well, it's been a rough couple of weeks, a rough few weeks, a rough year. There's just been a whole lot of changes going on at the Callus household here. And, you know, we can only do so much. We only have so much time, so much energy, so much effort. And getting pulled 6 ways from Sunday. And now, well, you know, I got a leg kicked out. Actually, I could be so far as to say I got both legs kicked out. I got back up onto my knees and then got kicked. Got kicked in the groin. I'm not going to go into details. Just stuff happens, right? You can't be mad. You just got to accept that's the way the world works sometimes. This too shall pass. And I will carry on. However, what's played out over the last few weeks has inspired me for at least 2 more episodes. And I feel that I would be doing you, my audience, and me, myself, a disservice. One of them is going to be on the death of Chrysler, or perhaps the suicide of Chrysler, or the murder of Chrysler, depending on how you want to look at it. And the other one is just going to be a conversation about where has all the service gone, right? Where have all the people gone that once upon a time were really big about taking care of their customers? The two are related, but not, if that makes sense. There's some overlapping intersectional experiences, but not directly. So I'm going to give you a 701 and a 702. They will likely be short. Heck, today is going to probably be short. It should be a celebration. It should be, you know, a milestone episode, you know, patting myself on the back for, you know, getting through 700 numbered episodes all on my own, you know, out of pocket, you know, solo, no advertising, no nothing. But man, this last 6 months has been a beating. And I don't know what happened. I don't know why it is as far as the podcast goes, right? So I had originally planned on retooling and coming back, you know, hit November hard. I don't think that's going to do anybody any good. I hate to say it, but I'm going to probably have to reformat and retool the whole thing. I'm going to find a new host. I'm going to find a new format. I'm going to find a way to make this work, make it work well, and not be a burden. It can't be a burden if you're not making money. And I really, you know, everybody's got that little glimmer of hope that someday they'll make money with a side project. But at this point, I think I've written that off. I just accept that's not going to be part of the program. And I need to focus on, one, getting the alternative voice heard, right? Getting something unique out there, or at least semi-unique, independent. Let's go with independent. Getting an independent voice out there, being heard, and speaking into the local politics, the local interaction, the local government, to a degree, even local businesses. We don't have a significant local radio station anymore that has any talk show hosts that want to spend any time about anything that's happening outside of the city of Dallas. And while that has greatly limited the reach I would ever have, you know, if you're getting 1,000 downloads a day, that's pretty significant. And I did it. I mean, I had few months where I was hitting 800 to 1,000 downloads all the time. No exaggeration. And before that, I was at the 500 plateau. I mean, I was feeling like, okay, we're making a difference. We're getting things done here. Boy, and then something happened in April. I don't know. Maybe it was March. I don't remember, but certainly about 6 months ago, just the bottom fell out. And I don't know if it was you, the listeners. I don't know if it was, my game was just off that much, or if it was just the algorithm chopped us up, spit us out. And I really believe that's the majority of it, because I've heard of this happening before. I know of other podcasters or shows that have gone through that, where they've lost 30, 40, 60% of their listeners or viewers, and they have to build it all right back up. And if you have money to blow on that, great. I don't. I'm not going to. But I have some time. I have some energy. So we're going to have to figure out how to do this, how we can make a difference going forward. So that's the things to come, right? So we'll get 2 more episodes kind of in the same vein of what I've been doing. And then we're going to take some time off. I'd like to tell you that I'm going to be back before Christmas. I'd like to tell you I'm going to hit the ground running on December 1st. I might do a few test episodes in December with the new provider and the new formatting. Call it some beta testing, if you will. But the plan is January to be up, new show, new plan. Let's go. And as always, Texas first. Okay, so here we go. For my remaining time, we're going to talk about the Great American IQ Test, aka known as the General Election of 2024. Now, I know I'm partisan. I know that I self-identify as a Republican. I am pro-liberty. I get lumped in with conservatives. Some of the locals have called me various different things. That's okay. One of the things I try to always do is remain objective and at least try and understand where the other people are coming from. And I hear and I've listened to all these wild accusations about how bad the Donald 2.0 is. I got to tell you, they just fall flat. There's no there. And then I sit and I ponder, in what world did Sleepy Creepy Joe legitimately get 81 million votes? I mean, I find it incredibly odd, nigh impossible, that a guy that campaigned from his basement excited 81 million people enough to go out and vote for him. Now, the Donald, he's got all of his own problems. I mean, I got to say that, honestly, the first Republican president that I went and voted for, both in the primary, in the general election, in my adult life, and served. And I got to be honest, he didn't let me down. Of course, I had very, very low expectations, to be fair. And then I compare the person running against him, Sleepy Creepy Joe. I mean, look, he went up against the Clinton machine and to a lesser extent the Obama machine, and he managed to win. And then he managed to get more votes four more years later, right? 4 more years. He grew his voting turnout, which historically is a guaranteed win. Yet we're supposed to believe that Sleepy Creepy Joe got 81 million votes. So if that's the way the game's going to be played, if that's what we understand our face of reality is, you're going to have to change your game. Now, I will say that setting all the partisanship aside, right, just objectively looking at Joe Biden's residency in the White House, it's been a mess. It's been ineffective. It's been problematic. It's been disastrous. They've had some terrible policies. And Kamala, Kamala, whatever the proper way to say her name is, I'm sorry, I get confused. She's even worse. I mean, I thought you would have to work hard to find a guy that has a legitimate mental defect or deficiency at this point. Right? I mean, I don't think anybody truly denies that anymore. I mean, they ran him off his own ticket because of it. His incapacity mentally is known issue, and they replaced him with his vice president, probably the only person in national politics that sounds worse and is less qualified and less capable, and quite frankly, is a basket case. And if that wasn't bad enough, we got saddled with a candidate in the Democrat Party that the Democrats didn't even want. And when I say that, I mean the actual voters, the people that are supposed to show up and be excited about Miss Harris or Mrs. Harris. I don't believe it. And then to make matters even more interesting, she went and picked probably the worst individual to be her running mate. You know, I was hard pressed to imagine that Joe Biden could find a running mate that was not as good as he was, right? Somebody that would make him look good. I was hard pressed to figure that out, how he was going to do that. You know, Harris kind of did the job. But now that we look at how much lower the bar is for Kamala Harris, you need somebody that's going to make her look good. So she went and found Coach. Yeah. I only hope that enough news about this guy has gotten out and about to the hinterlands that people will see him for what he is. And we're just going to put aside the accusations of, you know, inappropriate relationships with young people. We're going to set aside the firing that's let's just say interesting from when he was a coach. We're just going to focus on his policies and politics. This is a guy that's traveled to China. Now, he kind of lied about that. Got caught lying about it. And they just said, well, you know, I'm kind of a dunderhead. I don't remember what he actually said. Who cares? But he admitted he lied, essentially. He couldn't get the dates. I mean, if you're going to run on the fact that you traveled to China and claim that you were there for Tiananmen Square, you probably ought to have the dates right, or at least close. Right? At least give yourself some plausible deniability, but he couldn't even do that right. Now, Brian McClanahan has said, you know, he is a relatable guy. He looks reasonable. But, I mean, seeing him in that hunting vest with a shotgun kind of had shades of Dukakis with the tank helmet on. Just saying. So the top of the ticket is quite literally Dumb and Dumber. And we're going to be expected to believe that they got, let's just say, 75 million or more votes. We're just going to be expected to believe that happened. And we're not even getting to the outcome of the election, which, by the way, is the Electoral College that we deal with, folks, right? And the fact that we even have to explain why the Electoral College is important, how it works, or why it's there, what the purpose it serves, floors me. Oh, but that could be because, you know, public education hasn't saw fit to actually educate their students for quite some time, because that was never the design of public education. As one of the foremost developers of the Prussian school system that we have here in these United States described, John Dewey, in 1899, an educational philosopher, had said, "The children who know how to think for themselves spoil the harmony of the collective society that is coming, where everyone would be interdependent." Now that sounds great if you willingly choose that for yourself. I mean, if you want to go live in a commune, go for it. I mean, I got to be honest, I've thought about it a couple times. How cool would that be to live in a community where everybody agrees to look out for each other and do their own things? I mean, trying to relive the book of Acts in modern times. And the book of Acts, they were all of like mind, like faith, similar background, and they didn't do that for an extended period of time. In fact, pretty much every commune that I've read about or seen historically only lasts really for 10, 20 years at most. I mean, so again, it's one of these things that sounds really great in theory, but in practice just never happens. But we have lots of examples of the socialism, the communism, the fascism, that quite frankly is all that comes from the progressive mindset of the Democrat Party at this point. And we know they fail. We know they're a mess. We know they're detrimental to those around them. Yet, for whatever reason, we're expected to believe that the majority of people want this. Now, I want to be careful how I say this next part, because I know there are a lot of people that are uber sensitive about some of this stuff. So I'm going to use the term Heritage American. I know it's got some baggage. We could say Historical American. I'm not sure that doesn't have baggage. But we're going to just use this to describe people that have been here for 3 generations or more. And by people, I mean all people. Their families that have been here in the United States, these United States, for at least 3 generations. So in my case, my father was born here. My grandmother was born here. But her father, that's kind of iffy. I know her mother wasn't. So my great-grandparent, on my father's side, his mom, came over from Ireland. Her husband, i.e. my grandmother's father, what we know is he was at least half Indian. We're not entirely sure, because nobody will really admit to it, that he was from one of the tribes up there. I like to think Mohawk, but it could be, any number of the Iroquois tribes up there. And I don't know enough about the Native American culture or tribal organizations in that time period to speak clearly on that subject. So I just demur and say, well, in theory, I'm part Indian, but not enough to make a difference, and not enough that I would ever make an issue of it, unlike, say, certain Elizabeth Warren. But that's a different story. So that's what I define as a Heritage American. So you could almost make the argument, successfully, if you will, that my father was not a Heritage American. Right? You could also say that, there are millions of people that don't look like me and don't sound like me that were here since the 1850s or 1840s. Or if you want to get really dicey, you could go all the way back to 1619. They're still, by my definition, Heritage Americans. Now, they had a different heritage, and I would say that certainly 150 years ago or more, the vast majority of them had a really bad time of it. But I would say they have a vested interest in America. They have a vested interest in these states. They have a vested interest in our success. You could also say there were a whole lot of folks that came over from Asia at the time of the railroad expansion, right? They've been here for 100 years or more. Again, at this point, I would call them Heritage Americans. Maybe somebody wants to argue. Maybe somebody wants to say, that needs to be limited to the people that, colonized the East Coast. Okay, fine. I will give that to you, Heritage American. But if you let me have Historical American. Again, if you've been here 3 generations or more, your family, I believe you're Historical American. Now we get to the issue is, how do you describe an American? Well, that gets a little interesting. See, because I believe there's always been we'll call them a populist tinge in all of America. All the states had their branch of populism, i.e. we're going to care about our own people and our own ideas. We're going to put our people first. That's how I would define populism. Now, I know there's a whole lot of other stuff that goes with that. And again, I know that term has a lot of baggage. Quite frankly, I'm not really worried about any of that. I just need you to understand that for the purposes of my discussion, I include those folks. And I am fairly certain that a majority, let's just go with 55 to 60% of those people, do not support the progressive, socialist, Marxist, Democrat Party that we have today. They're not on board with that. And it seems entirely evident, based upon the behaviors of the last 3 years, that the Democrat Party leaders completely understand that as well, which is why they've been flooding our country with people from the third world. Because those folks, God bless them, but they're brought up in Marxism. They're brought up in progressivism. They're brought up with socialism. And not only that, a good number of them actually like it. They don't know anything different. They expect it. That's what they need. That's what they want. And to a lesser extent, the same said school districts that, quite frankly, a lot of foolish parents have trusted to train up their children, have put up children for at least 2 generations now that think the same way. And that's a huge number of people that we have to overcome each and every election cycle, and it's only going to get harder and harder to do that. So then when we look at the ballot and you see at the top of the ticket Donald Trump, and all you've heard are the stories, the hyperbole, the garbage of all the things that he's done and said, all I'm going to tell you is the guy has a solid education. He's been in a risky business for most of his life and has done quite well. He raised at least 4 kids that turned out pretty decent. He's got baggage in his life, a lot more than most people I know, but he keeps getting up and he keeps doing the job. And I got to tell you, when I'm looking at a president, I want a guy that's going to get beat up, beat down, and get up and start all over again the next day. And somebody that can think and have some unique ideas, which, quite frankly, in today's day and age, unique ideas are anathema. We're also fortunate where I live in Congressional District 3, we've got a really good Congressman Keith Self that we need to reelect. We also have Ted Cruz in the state of Texas, which if that man can't get 55% or better of the Collin County vote, I mean, we might as well just hang it up. Now, I don't care what you think about him personally. I don't care what you think about him as, whether or not he's your brand of conservative. He is going to be hundreds of times better than Colin Allred, as in commie red, comrade red. Yeah? I mean, look, you just got to call him as you see him. We got to quit pussyfooting around and pretending that these people are just normal, regular Americans like us. They just have some different ideas. Yeah, I don't believe that anymore. And it's really hard to keep pretending when they keep tipping their hand. And then if you're on that ballot, you're going to see Supreme Court, Criminal Court of Appeals, both of which are the top courts, respectively, having to do with civil courts and criminal courts. Texas Supreme Court is the last stop for any civil appellates. And the Criminal Court of Appeals is just what it is. That is the top. And then where I'm at, we get to vote for Pam Little. Now, again, we had a contentious primary. Wasn't my first choice, but guess what? She's going to be 100 times better than her Democrat opponent. We've got the great senator for Senate District 8, Angela Paxton. Happy to vote for her. And then when we drop down beyond that, you got the 5th Court of Appeals. We got 7 people running for election there. Now, if we don't get all these people across the finish line, we're in trouble. We cannot give up these judges. When the judges lose, the courts start making really bad decisions, and they are altering our laws by the order of a person in a black robe rather than the elected representatives that are supposed to write our laws. It matters. We have 2 great commissioners that are up for re-election. They don't really have competent opponents, but in case you didn't know, if you're in Precinct 1, it's Susan Fletcher, and my guy in Precinct 3, Daryl Hale, happy to vote for him. Okay, now we've got all of our constables. They're all Republicans. They're all up for re-election except for Steve Asher, the new guy over in Precinct 4. Carpenter, Kurtz, Knapp, and Asher. All good choices. Go for it. Okay, now I got to tell you, I live in HD 61 and we got to change out this go round, right? One of only 2 successful flips in the primary. And again, I say this all the time. It's fine and it's fun to fight in the primary. You want your best Republican that's going to best represent you. But when that's over, as a good Republican, you have to accept, I didn't get the Republican I wanted, but I'm going to get a Republican because, again, they're going to be hundreds of times better than the Democrat, your only other option. So I've got Carissa Richardson. You might have Katrina Pearson, Matt Shaheen, Jeff Leach, Steve Kennard, or Candy Noble. Okay? And then we've got all of our judicial court judges that are right underneath that. There are tons of door hangers out. They can be used as voter guides. Take them with you. All of the judges have to get voted for. If you don't vote for your judges, you're not doing the ballot the correct way. You're not doing what you need to do. This isn't a primary where you just go pick the 6 or 8 people that you're most vested in that you want to get them across the finish line. This is a general election. If you don't vote for every Republican candidate, we're going to lose. And even if we win, it's going to be much closer than it needs to be. You need to go down the entirety of the ballot. Now in Calhoun County, that leaves the sheriff, Jim Skinner, and my friend, the guy running to be tax assessor, and finally, after I think 6 years now, he's going to be successful. We're going to get him across the finish line, Mr. Scott Grigg. Okay, those are your marching orders. If you live in Calhoun County, you know what to do. Every Republican on the ballot must get a vote. Now, look, if you hate the Republican, I get it, but you're going to hate the Democrat that much more. Grow up, get over it, let's move on. We have to do what's best. We have to keep the Republicans in office. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's 100%. It's just the way it is. Take your 95, take your 85, take your 75, because your alternative is going to be 25 or 30% of what you want. They're going to actively work against you. They're going to destroy what's left of our country. They're going to tank Texas. And you know how I feel about that. I stand for Texas first. I want to put Texas first on each and everything I do. And if that means I have to settle for a less than desirable Republican candidate, I will gladly go out and vote for them to keep out the progressive, leftist, Marxist Democrats. We have to do it. It's the right thing to do. Okay, special addendum. If you live in the city of McKinney, there are 4 propositions. Now, you can look at all the different ins and outs of all of them. I'm going to tell you right now, C and D, I have no issue. I know that there's some transparency issues. I know that, there's a lot of quote-unquote hidden things behind this. But by and large, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to get rid of some dusty old language. We're going to modernize some things. And we're going to try and, do things to get up to speed. Now, Proposition B, yeah, I know there's some folks that are not happy about it. Oh, they're going to get a pay raise. Yeah, I saw it. When you're making less than $1,000 a month to be an elected official, and your regular job is paying you, $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year, that extra $10,000, $12,000 you might be getting, come on, really? I mean, look. You can love or hate our mayor, but there's a guy there, and I've always said I'm not super particularly fond of him, but I have zero doubt in my mind that he's always working an angle for the city of McKinney. Now, that angle may benefit him. I'm not going to argue that. You guys can go deal with that on your own. But I will say, whether or not you like the guy, he's always working for the city of McKinney. He's always doing something. Now, some of it might be just running his mouth, but I know he's working deals and he's getting stuff done. And I got to say, I don't like everything he's done, but on the whole, he hasn't been terrible in policy, in the things that he's doing. Yeah, we all know we don't want any more apartments. I get it. But if you're going to constantly be fighting with the guy, calling him names, again, he's going to do the same thing right back to you. He's got a proven track record of doing that. I'm hoping myself personally, they get the pay raise. And it takes effect after the elections. I think that's appropriate. And it's a pittance for what some of these guys are doing. It really is. I don't begrudge somebody that wants, to get $600-700 a week or a month, $600-700 a month, or whatever the number is, rather than $200. I think that's fair. Proposition A, you have your choice. Is 8 enough, or do you want to give them 12 years? It's as simple as that. Myself, I believe 8 is enough, but I won't cry or lose sleep if they get 12 years. And with that, this has been According to Callus. Get out and vote, because I'll see you on the other side.